Welcome back, HAXManiacs. That's right, it's that time of year again. It's hurricane season.
The first day of hurricane season arrives.
And it is expected to be a busy one.
Yeah, not almost right on schedule, but literally right on schedule.
With a storm organizing in Florida's direction.
We're about 2 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, you know, as the seagull flies. Today, I want to share with you how we prepare for a hurricane, what we use to get ready, and how we get ready to evacuate if necessary. The area we live in has not had a direct hit from a hurricane in over 100 years, and no real threat in decades until 2016 with Hurricane Matthew. We had mandatory evacuations that year, which, to be honest with you, I don't know why they call them mandatory, because they're not. Now, this was our first time dealing with such an event, so we thought we'd be really smart and we'd book our hotel room like a week in advance, just like everybody else apparently, because they were all booked up. Now, I for one hate with a passion staying at a hotel or a motel. They just always feel like you're throwing a mattress and a blanket down on the floor of a public restroom. Now, I actually feel the same way about eating in fast food restaurants, so, you know, what can I say? They're just disgusting. If you've never had to evacuate, let me paint a picture for you. Basically what you do is you throw basically everything, that means anything to you, into the back of your car, and then you make a horrible drive to a miserable place. And then you sit in that room and then you watch the Weather Channel exaggerate how terrible things are in your town. And then you hope that when you get home, your house is still there and that it's still dry. Now, one thing you never hear them talk about on the news is all the thievery. Now, I'm not talking about looting. Everybody knows about the looting. I'm talking about the people that, just like all predators in the animal kingdom who seek the vulnerable out, they peruse through hotels at night, knowing that people from out of town have all of their valuables and, you know, just basically anything important to them in the trunk of their vehicles. Now, we didn't see any of this in the news, and I don't know why they don't ever report it on the news, but we were definitely hearing about it happening to people around us. So I spent basically every night that I was in the hotel room to begin with staring outside the window at the vehicle all night, because, you know, we had the girls' baby stuff, we had my computers for work, all of my mom and dad's stuff, and why can't I get this key out of here anyway? That is, until after a couple of nights, I decided it was just easier to just sit in the truck all night, and that way I could monitor everything. You'd probably be surprised at how many looky-loos drive through the hotels that night. Quite a bit, actually. Now, after a week of that, they opened the roads back up and we were able to come home. Now, we were blessed in the sense that our home was completely untouched, while some of the others very nearby to us were not. That home at the time sat at a whopping, I think, 16 feet above sea level. That was our first evacuation experience, but not our last. The next one was straight out of a horror movie. I'm not even exaggerating. I'll tell you more on that in just a second. Before I go into that, let's talk about what you need to have on hand to be ready. First things are water and food. Experts say you need 3 days water per person and 3 days food per person. Now, based on those recommendations, I don't believe those experts have ever been through an actual emergency or watched the news after one. I would have 5 to 7 days of each for an emergency. And you better have this stuff on hand before the storm is even announced too, because the grocery store shelves emptied out fast when the world was halfway normal, and the new normal, for the time being at least, means that they may be empty at any given time, storm or no storm. You need at least 1 gallon of water per person each day. Although, you know, this would be 3 days for one person, so does that really look like that would be enough? Probably not. You can keep water bottles, or you could use something like these 7-gallon water jugs that we have a bunch of these on hand and I keep in the trailer. You can even get something that goes in your bathtub. I think one brand is called like a water bob, and it fills up. It's a plastic container that sits in your bathtub, and you fill it up from the tap, and it holds like something from 70 to 100 gallons of water. As a side note, if you're like me and you have a deep well, don't even think about drinking that water after a flood until it's been tested for contamination. Oh, and the used to be poo water that comes from a city tap is probably currently poo water. So don't drink that unless you got the go-ahead from the city or county. Ergo vis-a-vis, you need to have even more clean water available to drink. Now, if you've got electricity, you can always boil that water. Water purifiers are good to have on hand as well. We have this Berkey, which is kind of a requirement if you want to be a homeschooler or a homesteader. Technically, you can't call yourself either if you don't have a Berkey. There's other type of filtration systems that are simple as well, like this one. You fill up the bag, you drink the water through the straw. This one is a life straw. Same type premise. You just dip one end into the nasty water, and then you just drink through this, and it filters like 99.9% of all the bad stuff. Since we live on the coast, I always thought it'd be kind of cool to make a desalinator, but might be something fun for later. Freeze-dried food, whether made at home or prepackaged, I've already done a video on this, is great for emergencies, or you could even just buy some surplus MREs, meals ready to eat. Food like canned tuna and crackers are great for emergencies, while ramen noodles and dried soups are cheap emergency food. Now, those will require water and heat, of course. Canned goods like ravioli are easy and good to have, even if they aren't that great to eat, because you can't eat them cold. You could also just take along some bread and peanut butter. Ritz crackers with cheese. Also, one thing is, keep some energy bars on hand. Open up! Because it's going to be a stressful situation and your blood sugar is probably going to drop. So these are good to have on hand. But Adam, how would one heat up one's food without any power? Well, I'm glad you asked. Something like one of these little compact Coleman cooktop grills are really great and easy to store because they pack up really small. And to power them, all you need are like these 1 pound propane tanks, another cheap, easy thing to store. I always keep a bunch of these on hand for a variety of things. You can also buy 5 pound tanks, or we actually carry what is, I think, a 40 pound one. It's a pretty tall one whenever we go, because, we like to carry something bigger. It all depends on how much space you have. Do make sure that you've got a can opener for any canned food that you bring along, and make sure you got something to eat on, okay? I have like these camp mess kits that have plastic, not throwaway plastic, but hard plastic, forks, spoons, knives, plates, cups, bowls, and then we'll take some other various camp frying pans, stuff that folds up to compact sizes. Make sure you bring along some baby wipes, because you may not have access to running water or have any way to bathe. Good Lord, it's hot out here. Don't forget personal hygiene items like deodorant, toothpaste, and toothbrushes. Trust me, your family will appreciate it. Probably not a bad idea to carry some extra toilet paper with you. Make sure you have plenty of pet supplies as well. As you can see, we have 2.5 dogs. We have various parrots, chickens, a gerbil, rabbits, all that we have to bring and feed. You need a radio. Just because there's an emergency doesn't mean you have to miss out on your favorite jams. Or you could listen to the weather band. Probably a better idea. Now, if your radio doesn't crank, then you're probably going to need some batteries. In fact, I like to keep lots and lots of batteries on hand, but you're going to need these batteries to power these flashlights because you need to have a bunch of flashlights on hand. I like to keep a wide variety, basic, maybe not basic, it's got a bunch of colors on it. I like to have ones that will light up the whole room, kind of like my smile when I walk in. These are, these are for like if there's a fire actually, generally to shoot through smoke. Penetrating, and then I like to have something that's really bright and I can throw a long distance. Obviously, you want to make sure you have your phone available, and don't forget all your phone chargers. Something else that's really handy to have on hand is something like these little battery packs. that have the little USB chargers on them. You can see there at the front there. Close my face off. And these are also pretty cool. Some of these have a built-in flashlight. Bonus. And as you can see on here, I'm at 3/4 of the way charged, and I probably haven't charged this little battery pack in 2 years. So they hold a charge for a really long time. Another great option is a power station. Now I have a bunch of these now and I freaking love them. This is the Deltamax 2000 from Echoflow. Echoflow sent me to this a few months ago and I've been testing it out. It has 2,000 watt hours of usage on one charge. Basically what that means is when you plug something into it, it tells you how many watts are being used. You divide 2,000 by that number and that tells you how many hours of use you'll get before it needs recharging. Now, you actually don't have to do any of that because it tells you all that information for you. So no math required. This is probably the nicest power station that I've tested so far. It even has an app so you can control it by phone and get all the info you need. I used it to power our refrigerator a few weeks back when the power went off for the night. You know, a freezer's okay overnight, but probably not a refrigerator. And it had plenty of hours to go, probably about 14 to 20 hours it could have ran that refrigerator. Now, these are nice because there are no fumes like traditional generators, so you can keep them inside. You can also connect a solar panel to them to make this a solar generator. Now what I like about one this size is that I can actually power my camper, including the AC, for a good while. These are great for powering a window or a portable AC unit as well if your power goes out to your house and you have one of those for backup. Now Echoflow also has a really well thought out expansion system where you can connect extra batteries and even a gas generator that they'll kind of work alongside each other, which is a really cool system. Anyway, I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. Now, because I'm a paranoid freak, okay, I also like to carry a portable carbon monoxide detector. You know, hey, I've seen horror stories from hotels and stuff. These are fairly inexpensive. And in fact, the first year what I did was I just went and bought a combination smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector that was made to be mounted on the ceiling. And I just put it on the nightstand next to the bed. Houston, we have a problem. Okay, so the last time that I towed that trailer was with my dad's truck, which is a 1500, and it has a 2-inch hitch. My truck has a, well, let's go look. Yeah, my truck has a 2.5-inch receiver. And whenever I used this, last time I used this on my old heavy-duty Silverado, it actually had kind of a filler that went in here so that you could put a 2-inch hitch in a 2.5-inch receiver. I no longer have that. So it looks like we're off to the toy store. Now, when we evacuated for Irma in 2017, it was a nightmare. My cousin's husband had a house about an hour inland that he said we could use. Now this house was in the process of being remodeled after a former tenant was moving out of it. Now the first bad omen was when we pulled up into the yard and it was filled with pine trees. I mean, everywhere. I mean, 10 feet from the house. We were away from the major part of the storm, you know, no direct hit or anything, but we still knew we were gonna get some nasty stuff. But we figured we'd make the best of it, so we set up our camp chairs underneath the carport and cue Stephen King. I can't overstate how infested with spiders this house was. It was crazy. All shapes, all sizes. We took cots because there was no beds there, and you would be laying in the cot, staring up at the ceiling, and all of a sudden, just here they would come down right in your face. It was crazy. And then the lights went out. We had a patrol with flashlights all night long, and we probably killed hundreds out of what I can only imagine were thousands of spiders. It was a real adventure for us because we just treated it like it was some crazy camping trip. After 2 nights though, I went out in the morning and one of the pine trees was laying almost over the house. the only thing that stopped it was this red light. No, actually, the only thing that stopped it was another pine tree that it leaned up against, or it would have fallen on the house while we slept. Check, please. Now, we were fortunate enough to find some horribly disgusting hotel rooms to house the whole family, and when we got back home, there was no damage to our home, but our evacuation adventures weren't over. And that, friends, is why you do this stuff before there's an emergency and not when there's an emergency, so that you can find out if there is some major issue. Behold, the hitch of destiny. I mentioned cots earlier, and that reminds me, you probably want to bring along some extra blankets and pillows, as well as a variety of puzzles and board games or cards or whatever it takes to keep you and any miniature people you may have with you entertained. Make sure you have a good first aid kit available. This is our adventure bag that we have from Refuge Medical. I already did a video on this, and this one is extremely comprehensive, but at very least you need to have a boo-boo kit with band-aids and things. It can kind of depend on whether you're going to evacuate or whether you're going to ride out the storm as to what you need, because a minor injury or a minor cut anytime during the week when there's not a storm can become a major injury that could be life-threatening if EMS can't get to you right in the middle of all the action. Our first aid kit includes most of this stuff, but make sure that you've got a supply of stuff like Advil, aspirin, Tylenol, children's cold medicine, fever reducer, and if you take heartburn medicine or something like that, make sure you have those on hand. And if you take any prescription medications, make sure you have at least a 7-day supply of those on hand as well. I like to keep some bug spray in the truck and in the car at all times, no matter what, because we live in the South and we don't know where we're going to go, but there's always some flying bitey bugs around. Make sure you keep some money on hand because, well, you never know, you might have to prove that you're a baller of some sort. Well, actually the ATMs may be down, and you probably want to carry real money because this is fake. Now, my way of preparing might be a little bit overkill because we prep like we're going to stay, and then we evacuate and take everything with us. So when we come back, we have everything we need. So with that in mind, do make sure you've got some extra gasoline as well as diesel or whatever else you might need, like propane or kerosene, whatever fits your needs. For me, that means I'm going to need some mixed fuel because I'm also going to be taking my chainsaw, which most people won't. But we live in a heavily treed area, and so there's a good chance that whenever I come home, I might have to clear a path. I'm also, at the very least, going to have a small camp axe and a folding limb saw. Duct tape, as we know, fixes everything, even though this is white instead of silver or black duct tape. I like to keep this on hand at all times. Actually, I just had to kind of get it pulled forward because I couldn't access the tires on the other side because of all the junk that I've been, hiding behind the trailer. Now, our last evacuation came in 2019. That was for Hurricane Dorian. And we were gone one night when we realized that the path it was taking was the same as Matthew. Now, we knew what Matthew had done, and we knew what our elevation was at this house. We were actually at this house at that point. We had moved from our old house, and this house is at a 14-foot elevation. So we felt like we were pretty safe. And we just didn't want to go through the misery of staying in a hotel again or anything like that. Now, since then, we have finished the camper so that we have this as our bug out, our hurricane bug out trailer. But we came home and basically nothing. It was a nothing event. We watched the trees blow like crazy, and that was it. So once again, we were very fortunate that we were just skirted by the hurricane. You may want to have some of these quick dams. They're basically like a giant diaper. I'm pretty I'm pretty sure they're filled with the same stuff that diapers have in them. You just throw them down, they get wet, and they become like a sandbag. We used to use these a lot at our old cabinet shop because it was in a low-lying area, and even when we had a hard rain, it would flood, and we would protect it using these. The other thing is, you probably want to have some type of, how shall I say, hole punch or lead dispenser. That will prevent your supplies from becoming somebody else's supplies. They make good ones in Austria and here in Georgia. You need to make sure that you have your insurance in order. Oddly enough, the area we live in is not considered a flood zone, so we're not required to have flood insurance. But we do, you know, you don't have to live in a flood zone to have flood insurance. Guys, I hope you found this video at least slightly helpful. And if you did, you might want to check out this video for more storm action. This is where we installed a twister pod and above ground tornado shelter at my family's house. And if you want to know more about the cargo camper conversion, check out this playlist right here. See you next time.